Pierwszy gen stare debaty. Millennials, boomer trauma revisited.
2. What is the Gen Z stare? Debunking the myth.
Pierwszy gen stare debaty. Millennials, boomer trauma revisited.
Imagine this. A new generational clash is brewing, and it's all about a simple look, the Gen Z stare. Millennials and Gen Zers are at odds over this supposedly blank, awkward expression. But is this stare even a real thing? Or are millennials just repeating the same criticisms boomers once leveled at them? Let's dive in and unpack this generational showdown. Just when it seemed like millennials and Gen Zers had finally found common ground, the Gen Z stare debate emerged. This stare is described as a vacant look that Gen Zers allegedly give when faced with a question or an unfamiliar situation, especially in customer service roles like hosting at restaurants or taking orders at coffee shops. But here's where it gets controversial. Is this stare a genuine phenomenon? Or is it just another case of an older generation misinterpreting the younger one? As a Gen Zer myself, I'm skeptical about the existence of the Gen Z stare. But let's assume for a moment that it is real. There are plenty of cultural factors that could explain this perceived gap in social skills. And this is the part most people miss. Millennials might be diagnosing Gen Z in the same way boomers once diagnosed them. It's a bit ironic, isn't it? Millennials, are you sure you're not just turning into your parents? Let's talk about society for a moment. Gen Z has been labeled the loneliest generation, the most anxious generation, and the most rejected generation. Our workplace habits have been scrutinized by boomers, Gen Zers, and millennials alike, whether it's about our fashion choices, the topics we discuss, or even the slang we use. So maybe the Gen Z stare is a reaction to this constant scrutiny. If we know our responses will be picked apart, why wouldn't we pause to make sure we're saying the right thing? Moreover, Gen Z is a generation that has grown up under constant surveillance, thanks to social media. If the Gen Z stare is a product of our chronic online presence, we should ask, who set up this system? Who put the phones in our hands and made it so hard to disconnect, affecting our ability to form human connections? I'm not talking about our parents, but about the older tech founders whose innovations have led to these side effects. Founders like Mark Zuckerberg, a millennial himself. Beyond that, there are other reasons why Gen Z might be lacking in soft skills. Many of us went through college during the pandemic, attending remote classes and internships. Our first in-person jobs were the ones we got right after graduation, so we didn't have the chance to build professional etiquette before that. Is it so surprising that we might be a bit shy? Gen Zers are also facing high unemployment and underemployment, often working jobs that don't require their degrees. Even computer science graduates, who were told their field was a sure path to financial stability, are struggling to find jobs as the tech industry landscape changes. Can you blame a 22-year-old barista for not being thrilled about working a cafe job right out of college? Let's unite the youth. I don't want to sound too therapeutic, but maybe this is a case of millennials projecting their own boomer-bred trauma onto the generation below them. It wasn't so long ago that boomers complained about millennials' supposed softness, entitlement, and avocado toast spending habits. Poking fun at the younger generation is nothing new, but punching down isn't the answer. When younger people unite, we can do impressive things. As a bloc, we have the power to create recession-resistant market sectors and challenge workplace norms. We're pretty aligned on wanting our workplaces to treat us like people, not cogs. There is some truth to the Gen Z stare debate about my generation's lack of social skills, but that didn't happen in a vacuum. Boomers couldn't comprehend the harder hand millennials were dealt when they were our age, either. Gen Z deserves a little slack here. But don't get me started on Gen Alpha. That's a whole other story. So what do you think? Is the Gen Z stare a real phenomenon? Or is it just another case of generational misunderstanding? Share your thoughts in the comments and let's keep the conversation going. 2. What is the Gen Z stare? Debunking the myth. The Gen Z stare, a misunderstood phenomenon employers need to understand. There's a new phenomenon sending shockwaves through the workplace, and it's called the Gen Z stare. This blank, expressionless look has been popping up in meetings and customer interactions, leaving older generations confused and even offended. But experts say there's more to the stare than meets the eye. At first glance, the Gen Z stare might seem like boredom, indifference, or even defiance. It's easy to write it off as just another example of Gen Z being difficult to manage. After all, this is the generation known for quitting jobs that don't prioritize work-life balance and expecting rapid promotions. But here's where it gets controversial. Some experts believe that the Gen Z stare is actually a sign of a deeper disconnect between younger workers and traditional office culture. During the pandemic, many Gen Zers missed out on critical social interactions, leaving them unsure of how to engage in small talk or interact with strangers. In fact, the frozen expression might even resemble a trauma response, like a deer caught in the headlights. It's a subtle cue from a generation raised on screens and fast-paced communication, where constant eye contact isn't necessarily a sign of attentiveness. So what does this mean for employers? It's easy to misread the Gen Z stare and draw negative conclusions about younger workers. But experts say that leaders need to move beyond snap judgments and take a closer look at how they interpret employee behavior. The real challenge lies in the widening gap between evolving employee behaviors and long-standing workplace norms. In today's multi-generational workforce, there's no one-size-fits-all definition of engagement. Misreading body language or communication styles can create unnecessary confusion and frustration, as well as missed opportunities to connect. Instead of writing off the Gen Z stare as a sign of disengagement, employers need to understand how to connect with this generation on their own terms. That means prioritizing authenticity, flexibility, transparency, and a shared purpose in the workplace. Younger workers thrive in environments where they feel valued and understood. They want mentorship, not micromanagement, and meaningful work, not just a paycheck. To better engage Gen Z, leaders must cultivate a culture of open dialogue, set clear expectations, and be willing to evolve how they lead as younger generations continue to enter the workforce and rise through the ranks. News outlets may mock the Gen Z stare, but employers cannot afford to misunderstand and misjudge the future generation that will dominate the workplace by 2030. What do you think? Is the Gen Z stare a sign of disengagement, or is it a misunderstood phenomenon that requires a closer look? Let us know in the comments below.